What is author marketing mastery through optimization, you ask? I'm going to tell you. It is absolutely, bar none, the best way for authors to make a living selling their books. Are you tired of feeling like you have to be on social media 50 hours a week just to sell a few books, and then frustrated when that time doesn't actually lead to any book sales? Are you tired of hearing people say that you just have to be patient with the social media game for a long time so that you can build that following and that trust? Yeah, I was too, because there's only one of me, and Ammo solves that problem. Now here's the deal. It's a system that can actually guarantee results, and I'm not the one doing the guaranteeing, and I don't think that Steve Piper, who founded Ammo, would literally say that it's a guarantee. But what's a guarantee here is that when you spend advertising dollars in a right way, you get results and you're profitable. Okay, the concept here is if you spend $1 and make $2, you are profitable. And Ammo does that for its authors. I want you to check out the link in the show notes because this program has the ability to change your life. And hey, it's not for everyone. If you're a traditionally published author, it might not work for you because your margins will be too small to get profitable advertising on your own. That's something you'll have to take up with your publisher. But if you're self-published, if you're indie published, this thing could be great for you. If you have a few books out, especially if you're a series writer, this is a game changer. The whole podcast is now part of the Ammo family. So you'll notice every Wednesday, this show is Ammo Edition. But even on Mondays, you're listening to a show that exists because this author, this host of the podcast uses Ammo and makes money selling books. It's a beautiful feeling. I encourage you to check it out. I'm going to keep it short for you today. The interview surpasses anything that I could say to you in preparation. And I'm really excited to have one of the most successful authors in the Ammo program speak to you. When I talk to an author who's as successful as my guest, Gordon Carroll, has been, you might think those results are not typical. And if you've ever seen an infomercial, they always have the small print at the bottom of the screen that says these results are not typical. I think in this case, the results are a little more typical than you realize. There are a lot of authors in the Ammo program who are making a full-time living on their books. So I'm excited to present the conversation to you, and I'm happy that I get to start out with somebody who is a cornerstone and a foundation of the program. Also really excited to bring you David and Lydia Scherer coming up here in just a week or two. And finally, because this is still the TRBM podcast, I'd love for you to check out my books as well. They'll be at the very bottom of the page. I want to present you with everything else first. And then if you want to grab my books, I'll have a link there for you. Ebooks are the cheapest way to get all four in the beginning of my series, the Luke and Time Mysteries, or you can grab paperbacks if you wish. I'll have a deal for all of those. The only place you can get these deals is either through the podcast or Facebook advertising, so don't sleep on it. I'll give you a direct checkout link. Same with Gordon. His book deal will be a direct checkout link in the podcast. And finally, if you are not subscribed to the Substack for this podcast, you're missing more than 50% of the content that I provide weekly. There are pictures of things that we have in the conversation. Like today, I actually have an image of Shotgun Willies, so you can kind of see what we're talking about there, as well as Gordon's book covers. None of that stuff can come through on the show notes you find if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, anywhere else that I might meet you. So go ahead and click on the link to subscribe to the Substack for this podcast. That way you can read the show notes the way the show notes are intended to be read. If you're listening to the show, you're a writer, so you like reading things. This is going to be a great fit for you. Appreciate you and enjoy this conversation with Gordon Carroll. This is TRBM Ammo Edition. If you're a published author and you want to make a living writing books and selling them to avid readers, you've come to the right place. There's simply no program that's more successful at driving readers towards the books you've written. So the only thing you have to worry about is writing a great book, and the system within Ammo takes care of the rest.
I probably first started writing short stories or attempting to write short stories when I was about 17 after I met my wife. Yeah, because she or my future wife, we started dating when I was 17 and she was 16. She's 6 months younger. But so that's always my joke that for 6 months out of the year I've got a younger wife.
Yes.
So she was into writing. And so when she was doing it, I always loved reading books and things like that, especially like Conan the Barbarian and stuff like that, the
Yeah.
Robert E. Howard. So because of her interest in it, I started trying to do it. And I could never finish a story forever, because you start
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
And this is something I found for new writers a lot. What they'll want to do is they start a story,
Hmm.
all excited about it. Because have you done writing?
Oh
Have
yeah,
you?
absolutely. I've got novels.
Great.
I'm part of the AMO program is
Oh,
how
okay, awesome,
yeah, yeah.
awesome. So you know how it goes with writing. So what happens is when you first start, there's no rules.
Yep.
Everything is free, so you can just put whatever you want in there. But after just a short while in the story, you have now established rules.
Hmm.
That if you're going to be a good writer, you can do whatever you want as long as you stay within the rules that you have constructed, right? If
Hmm.
there's a trans warp, then that's fine. But trans warp better stay within the rules of trans warp, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, your readers are going to be, oh, that doesn't make any sense. So after a while, you constrict yourself with rules, and then it's work. It's still
Hmm.
fun, but it's also work. And because it's now work, I see, I used to always go, well, forget that. I'll start this new story idea I've got because it sounds so cool to me.
Yeah.
And then I would start. So that's where I was lost for a long time when I started my writing journey. So that's
Yeah.
what happened. So it wasn't until I think my wife sat me down and said, hey, you got to finish a story sometime.
Yeah.
It's fun to read, 1,500 words of your story, but then all of a sudden it ends. So I
It's
don't know
over.
what happens to it because you
Yeah.
don't end it. So that's no fun for me. So
Hmm.
that's when I started disciplining myself and buckling down and getting to where I could finish short stories. So that's what I always tell writers when I'm talking or people who are buddies of mine
Hmm.
who want to get into the writing. I always say, start off with a short story, just have a
Hmm.
beginning, a middle, and an end, and get it done. And then you can
Yeah.
go back and rewrite because, as we all know, there's no great writers. There's only great rewriters.
That's right. Absolutely. It's an interesting idea too, because I came up through the MFA crowd. I got my bachelor's in fine arts with fiction focus, then went on to get my master's. And so there was this huge focus on the short story. And I think because of that, for a long time, I was deeply opposed to outlining because it felt like that was not artistic to outline a story. But also, when you're dealing with something that maybe is going to reach about 5,000 words, that's a typical short story kind of length, maybe even shorter, you don't necessarily need to outline, but there's a lot that could be lost. I'm curious, do you outline at this point for the kind of books that you're writing? And what are your thoughts on that coming from starting with short stories?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm exactly where you are on that. When I first started, no outlines. In fact, I thought if you outlined, you weren't a real writer
Yeah.
because it's the art, it's
Yeah.
the getting into it, and I want to see what's going to happen next, and I want the excitement. So to me, it was like no. And then I kept reading. I would do panels and stuff like that, because of being in the canine world and being a deputy sheriff and a writer, I would go to these conferences and they would have me on the panels to answer police questions and canine questions and things like that. And I started seeing from all these writers about how, boy, if you outline, it's just so much easier. And I'd be like, man, snobby, no, at
Yeah.
first. And then I outlined my first book,
Hmm.
and it took me like 1/3 of the time to finish it.
Yeah.
And I had just as much fun. In fact, I'm not even going to say that. I had more fun
Mm.
because it was so much easier. And it's still, you have that excitement and that
Yeah.
artistic process. So I outline all the time now.
Yeah.
And
That's
I preach it. I absolutely go with it. But I was right where you were at the beginning too. I did the same exact thing. It was like,
yeah.
no, we don't need to outline. So yes,
Yeah.
I outline all the time now.
Yeah, you know what I will say, and people who listen to this podcast know a little bit of this process for me, but I am fairly new to the outlining world. But what you just said struck me so much because I found that I had more fun after I outlined. So the first book in my series, the Luke and Time Mysteries, it took me 5 years from the time that I started it until it was finished, and then 3 years of shopping it with a literary agent before I decided I've got to do something different. which took me to self-publishing. And when I did, I was really curious, where in the world do you go to sell books? How do you actually sell a book? Because I've had a podcast about selling books for a while, but I've not actually done it myself. And that feels, I don't know, something's wrong there. And I was looking around and I found Steve and I found Ammo and I dove into it and I realized pretty quickly you need to have more than a book out there in order to do things. And so I've got to get books out efficiently, quickly, and they've got to be really good. So I have to turn this into a mechanized, almost like an assembly line process in every way that I can. And it was exciting to write the second book in about 3 months and have an editor ready for it as soon as I was finished with that draft after the outline and just start working through it from beginning to end in 5 months. And you're just like, wait a second, 5 months? It took me 5 years to write that last one. So
Exactly.
yeah, and I loved every moment of writing it too. I would feel so purposeful going to the page. There was no anxiety about where am I going to take this or how many huge plot holes there's going to be. So that's really nice. You've written a lot in your canine series with the sheepdogs, and I have not had the opportunity to read you yet, but talk to me a little bit about, I know that comes from your background in law enforcement and different areas. Where's the love and how do you keep the passion going after so many books? 9, I think, right?
I've just finished book 8.
Okay.
And I'm getting ready to start book 9, but I'm doing my rewrite on book 8 right now. So I typically will get the first draft completely done, and then I immediately go into a rewrite. I used to let it set for like a month or two, but I'm 100% on board where you are, where no, now I need to make myself work. That was kind of a luxury to do when I wasn't selling books. But now I have Mans pestering me constantly. And it's good pestering.
Yeah.
Because it keeps me honest and it keeps me working to where I don't just start goofing off. Because I will goof off when you know how it is, like I hate mowing the lawn, but when I'm getting ready to go in and write,
yeah,
oh, I
nothing
better go
sounds
mow
better.
the lawn real quick first, or pick up the trash or take out the trash or whatever, because it, as much fun as it is, I know you know this just as well, but as much fun as it is to get behind it, see what happens next, because even though I have it outlined, you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and cool things happen while you're writing. So for me, it's like a movie unfolding in front of me, and I love that. So, but I would rather go sit on the couch and eat bonbons. I mean, it's just easy. So that's just it. So you have to make yourself go do it. But before I get into the sheepdogs thing, could I real quick just go into how my process happened with Ammo?
Yeah, please do. I would love to hear it.
So I really started trying to publish my books. The first book in the sheepdog series, and I only had one. I had another book written called Gunwood USA, which I sell also now with my bundle, and you know about the bundles. So that's part of C. Piper's marketing plan, which is brilliant. So I had Gunwood USA done, and then I had done a horror novel called Bone Hill. So I was kind of like all over the place. And then I went to Sheepdogs, the first dog in the Sheepdog series, or first book in the Sheepdog series. So what happened was I started trying to put out first Bone Hill and Gunwood, and I was still kind of working on Sheepdogs. And I would do these conventions, and like I said, because I was involved with police work and canine, I would be on the panels, and I get to answer questions, talk about my book. And I was just first I was trying to get a agent, and finally at one of those panels I got an agent. And so we started trying to market Sheepdogs first one, because she liked that idea best. Let's go with that. So we did, and we got it in front of some pretty big publishers, and they were very interested, but they were like hung up on my part where it's from my dog's perspective. Because 1/3 of the book is from the dog's perspective. So it's not like, the dog can talk or anything like that. And because of my canine experience, I try to relate it as close as I can to what the canine thought process is. Of course, I can't really get into a dog's head, but I see how they act all the time. So I've got, 35 years of experience with that. So I put it in those terms. And that's what readers tend to really, really like about the books. They don't like Gil Mason character, which is, kind of like a cross between maybe Reacher and trying to think of who else, maybe Reacher and Conan the Barbarian. but he's a tough guy, but he's quirky, he's kind of funny, he's got some real tragedy in his past. But the dog Max is a stone cold killer, but he has his own reasons for that. So the two together, they kind of butt heads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a working out process. The handler's trying to and the trainer, he's trying to figure out the best way to get this dog motivated to do what he needs him to do. The dog is trying to take over the pack. And that
Yeah.
really comes from the experience of mine with my first dog, which we can get into later. But I
Yeah.
actually had a dog that was rank, and he really did. Every 6 months, he would try to kill me and take over the pack, which
Wow.
wasn't fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
What's
imagine.
that?
I just said
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. But that's what gave me the inspiration for Max. But in any case, I went with this agent. She was a pretty high profile agent, pretty well known. She took me on after she heard about sheepdogs, and she put it up in front of a lot of different publishers.
Mm-hmm.
Had some real good tugs on the string, but they were hung up on the dog's perspective. So I completely rewrote the book without the
Oh,
dog's
wow.
perspective. Yeah. And then it didn't do as well. So I
Yeah.
rewrote it again, put the dog's
Oh.
perspective in, but from like first person instead of, or I think, yeah, from first person instead of third person.
Mm-hmm.
Then she had me rewrite it again from third person to first
Oh
person.
my
And
gosh.
this thing took, well, you know how it is.
Yeah.
That took a period of about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 years of time
Yeah.
wasted, really.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, at the end, she said, I just I don't think we're going to make it with this book. So you might want to go independent. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
no, independent writing is for losers. If if it's not published from a real publisher, then you're just spinning your wheels. You're just doing it for your self glory. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
appreciates it. So I was kind of in that mindset, And I had a writing buddy of mine that worked with me at the sheriff's office. We worked together for over 30 years. And he's a writer also. So we would go back and forth. And he's like, yeah, that independent writing, that's for people who can't make it in the real publishing. And we had
Yeah.
both been published in magazines, in several
Mm-hmm.
magazines. So we kind of had that little bit of that snobby attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
and Amazon was just coming out, and then people were really talking about how they could get self-published through there. And I was like, no, that's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make it with the real publishers. I had an agent,
Yeah.
all while working a full-time job and overtime, and raising a family with 4 kids and everything else. So it got to a point after the failure with the agent, because I started to think, well, maybe it is me. Maybe I'm really not cut out for the writing gig, just because
Mm-hmm.
I like it, and a few other friends and family, they like it. That doesn't mean it's any good.
Yeah.
And if the publishers aren't taking it, then maybe it's not.
Our stories are closer, I think, than you realize, even down to that. I had an agent, and for 3 years, we rewrote this book in every conceivable way until
Exactly.
I'm on a phone call with her, and she says to me, like, I said, I kind of am feeling like I need to do something else because we're not getting anywhere, and I'm considering that maybe we want to part ways, but that's a really hard decision. And she said, well, you don't have to fire me on the phone. And as soon as she said it, I knew immediately that a coward is going to walk out of this conversation and email later. And so I said, no, I do have to. You're fired. I can't do this anymore. And it was a great day, and also one of the most humiliating days of my life. I've never been traditionally published. Like you, I've been in magazines, but never made it to the hallowed halls of FSG or Little
Exactly.
Brown. Gosh. So, anyways, carry on.
But yeah, it sounds like we're almost empatico there. Wait
Yeah.
a minute, what was your agent's name?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We may have had the same agent. Now, I will say this too. I don't think it was through any fault of hers.
Yeah.
And she really worked. And I was a little bit bitter, I have to say, at first, after
Mhm.
so much time invested in all the work.
Yeah.
And I mean, the instant she told me she wanted me to rewrite or do something, I went to work. And I mean, I worked night and day until what she wanted done was that, how much difficult, how difficult it is to
Yeah.
rewrite an entire book. And something you poured your heart and soul into,
Yeah.
so that by the end, it was looking like total mud to me. I could not, it's kind of like doing a painting too much. I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea if it was any good at all anymore, because you just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't tell. But when she did, and you fired yours, but she fired me she did it in a really nice way. Like, I just don't think we're going to get anywhere here. You
Yeah.
might want to self-publish.
Yeah.
So kind of like, it's not you, it's me, but it's me. Okay. So, so when she did that, I was a little bit bitter because I had worked
Mhm.
so hard. I'd done everything asked and everything else.
Yeah.
So I was a little put off by it. But I have to say that I'm so glad she did,
Mhm.
because it did cut me free. And I was a little kind of like, oh, well, maybe this isn't for me. But I decided to go ahead and try the indie deal. And I
Yeah.
got another guy I know from another acquaintance that does independent publishing.
Okay.
And so I put it up on Amazon. And it wasn't Sheepdogs. I put Gunwood USA up.
Okay, so let's make sure that I'm completely tracking. So Sheepdog is the one that you're working on with the agent. Gunwood USA
Yep.
you have from somewhere else, and you decided to hold off on Sheepdog, and go with Gunwood USA as your first self-published book.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. And then as far as, can I just ask, is your thought process with Sheepdog, like maybe there's still a future in like a traditional publishing house for that series? Is that why you held off?
No, I actually
Okay.
held off on that because I thought, if first off, I had rewritten it so many times that I
You just
couldn't tell
didn't
if it
know.
was good anymore.
Yep.
Gunwood, I had done on its own, and it was not for a series necessarily. I thought maybe I
Mhm.
could do 3 books out of it. Sheepdogs, I was actually thinking series, and
Yeah.
so I thought it could be junk because obviously no publisher wants it, even though we had all this talk,
Hmm.
nobody accepted it. So I just figured it was dead.
Mm.
So I went with Gunwood. So, and Gunwood is about when I first started in law enforcement after I got out of the Marine Corps, I started in a small town here. You know,
Yeah.
Glendale, Colorado. Yeah.
Yep.
So its big reputation has had more bars, strip clubs, and gambling points than any place in the entire state. Okay. And actually in the entire country per capita, because it's only 1.4 square miles.
Hmm.
So per capita, it had more of those than any place else. Dr. Feelgoods and just all these places.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did, and I worked there for a year before we parted ways, and it wasn't
Hmm.
really. It was kind of like with the agent. The two
Yeah.
companies said, "We're not sure you're going to fit in here, okay?" And I was devastated because I had my family and everything else, and all of my reviews and everything were good, but it turned out that back then there was a lot of corruption going on
Mm.
in that small city that was kind of undercover. So one of the lieutenants called me and said, "Hey, look, I'm just going to tell you this, okay? You can make it as a cop, uh, obviously." He said, "but not here." Okay, so I've got word in with Arapahoe County, so you can go to Arapahoe County, and
Wow.
they'll take you on. And sure enough, they took me on immediately. Okay, and
Wow.
within the next year, 5 of the people I worked with, including my sergeant, were all in our jail.
Oh no.
They're all arrested.
Wow.
One of them, the sergeant, and I use him as a character in the book, but I change him up a little bit.
Yeah.
The vigilante Clubber in Gunwood, USA. But he was doing armed robberies for 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
But nobody knew. So it
Yeah.
wasn't until our deputies caught up to him in the midst of an armed robbery, and he tried to do a carjacking to get away. And when he pulled this woman out of the car, as she came out of the car, she grabbed his ski mask and pulled it off.
Oh
And
my
kept doing.
gosh.
We're like, and they said his name. I'm not going to say his name, but they said his
Yeah,
name,
yeah.
and he's like, jumps in the car, drives, takes off.
Oh
So
my
they
gosh.
go to his house, and he's sitting at home drinking a beer, watching TV like nothing happened.
Just waiting
So
at
anyway,
that
that's one of
point.
the characters in my book, and then the whole book is centered around my
Wow.
year, a little bit over a year in Glendale, but it's called Gunwood USA, of course. So when you read the book, you'll recognize sounds like, I don't Shotgun Willie's. You've heard of that place,
Yes,
that
absolutely.
strip club.
But looks
Well,
like Yosemite Sam. The logo almost looked like Yosemite
exactly.
Sam. Yeah.
Right. So in the book, I make it elephant guns. Everything in the city is named after some kind of gun, or
Yeah.
something to do with guns. So
That's
that's the
great.
way I do it in the book. So it's just fun.
Yeah.
But in any case, I went ahead and I self-published that through this friend of mine who had a small independent publishing company, and it did great on Amazon for a couple of weeks. I think we
Hmm.
got, I mean, great compared to what most authors' results are. I think I sold a total of about 500 books,
Yeah.
and pretty fast.
Nice.
That's all my friends and family and a couple of onlookers, right?
Yep.
So what I like to say is the hard part about self-publishing is breaking out of the friends and family group. Because
Yes.
once you've exhausted everybody how do you get, when there's 20 million books out there,
Yeah.
how do you get yours to stand out?
Yep.
And I had no clue. I had no clue. It made me feel really good at first. And in the comment sections where you're talking to people, and they'll say stuff like, well, why are you in here if you've already sold 300 books this quickly? Then you don't need to be in here talking to us. You need to tell us, which I had no clue. I didn't know what to tell
Yeah.
them. So I got a little, oh, okay, good. But then it just
Hmm.
like died completely. So, which I think is a lot of authors' experiences.
Yeah.
So actually after that, I kind of, I said, well, I'll keep writing, but I'm done with publishing for a while. I'm just going
Mm.
to, plus work was getting really busy. We'd really amped up the canine program. We got more dogs. So I was so busy at work that I was like, okay, I'll write when I can, but I'm not going to worry about the publishing at all. And that went all
Mm.
the way up until I was really close to retiring. I was getting close. I was just about to
Wow.
hit 60, and I'm 64 now. But I was just about to hit 60, and it was getting hard to get my walker over fences going after bad my dog. Plus, canine is pretty strenuous on your body just because you're
Yeah.
always it's the funnest job in police work, but
Hmm.
it is physically taxing. So I started thinking, oh, if I'm going to retire, what am I going to do? I don't want to be a security guard. I don't want to work at Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yeah.
Like a lot of cops when they retire, they get a second job. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to write.
Yeah.
So right when I was thinking about making that decision, that's when I saw Steve's ammo ad on Facebook. And it was right there. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, it's just one of these Facebook ads, I'm not gonna mess with that. And of course, Steve doesn't
Hmm.
tell you how much it costs or anything. He just
Right.
gives you the lead up and he goes, hey, but I can do this for you. And he seemed very confident. And I like that authority, the confidence he had.
Yeah.
And he seemed very down to earth. And I thought, well, it's probably a bunch of garbage, but I'll go ahead.
Hmm.
And this was it was either late 2018 or beginning early
I was gonna say it sounds like about 19 based on the
2019.
timeline that you've built.
Right. Well, I actually lollygagged at the beginning.
Okay.
And I sure wish I hadn't
Yeah.
because, but I was just too busy at work and I made a lot of excuses. So whatever.
Hmm.
But I shouldn't have because you signed up for the program. Steve has a personal one-on-one with you through a Zoom.
Hmm.
And Steve actually lives here in Colorado. So I should
Yep.
have gone to his house. I could have found it because I was a cop. But because Steve was in the Air Force, he might have bombed my house. So I decided not to.
Yeah.
So in any case, we did our Zoom, and he was very straightforward with me and very
Hmm.
honest, and just really exude. I mean, I got to check him out as Lars Emmerich and everything
Yeah.
else, and all of his books. And so then
Hmm.
I was much more impressed because you know how it is when you know, you can
Yes.
talk the talk, but if you can't walk the walk, then
Exactly.
hear from you.
Yeah,
So
exactly what I was saying earlier on is that like I'm hosting a podcast on marketing, and I have a lot of people who tell me from the early days when the show was called The Reluctant Book Marketer that I was helpful to them, that they've sold more books because of the things that I taught, the principles and the mindset that I taught. At the same time, it really did come to this moment where it's like until I've sold tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of books, I really can't keep doing this the same way that I've been doing it. So now it's much more like, hey, let me talk to an expert. Let me hear from you how you've done it, and then pass that on to the crowd. So I think that that's a much better fit.
Well, and what a way to help people too that way,
Yeah.
because you really are giving them the benefit of the experience that you've gone through and what experts are going through.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea. But so after I talked to Steve, and we had our Zoom, he said, well, what are you looking, Steve always asks, why do you want to do this? Because
Mhm.
he said, let me tell you right up front, you're getting ready to retire. You've had, a good career apparently. So why do you now want to do this where you're selling books instead of just writing them for fun?
Yeah.
And the one problem I always had with writing books on my own that got to mainly a couple of people, or 500 people really is pretty few, even
Yeah.
in my heyday on Amazon. Okay.
Yep.
And after a while, it takes time away from your family. And my
Yes.
family is everything to me. Okay. So we have 18 grandkids now. So it's like, my family is it. So
Yeah.
uh, you want that enjoyment of other people being able to enjoy your books and being able to get entertainment from it. Just like, I feel a lot of gratitude when I watch a really good movie or I read a really good book. I feel a lot of gratitude towards the person who created it because they gave
Hmm.
me a lot of entertainment for nothing. I mean, for a couple
Yeah.
bucks.
Yeah.
So I really do feel gratitude towards it. I'm thankful to them for
Mm.
having taken that work ethic and done that and letting me read it and experience it, be part of it because I love it. I mean, you read a
Yeah.
great book, when you read a great book, you're just like, wow. And I'm not saying that, I'm not the great American author, but I have fun
Sure,
in my,
yeah.
that's what I try to do. I try to just deliver entertainment to people because that's what I
Hmm.
see. I message sometimes, but very interwoven and not, I never like to be preachy.
Yeah.
Uh, so, or almost never. I try not
Yeah.
to. I
I hear
once in a
you.
while you'll have people come back,
Yeah. You can't
but
make everybody happy.
right, you can't make everybody happy. But so the idea I had at that point was I do want to do this, but if I was doing it just for me and like, a couple of hundred people,
Hmm.
it's sort of self-indulgent. I'm taking all this time away from my family. I'm not
Wow.
making
Yeah.
money at it. So it's really just self-indulgent at that point. I
Wow. Yeah.
enjoy it and I'm, getting a little bit of recognition for it. So it's self-indulgent. It's not helping
Hmm.
my family. It's not benefiting them or very many other people. So I felt
Yeah.
kind of guilty about that. And Steve really hit that point. He said, why do you want to do it? And I
Hmm.
said, well, I want to be able to supplement my income when I retire because I am going to be taking, about a $30,000 pay cut from no overtime and also
Yeah.
just you get less for retirement and stuff like that. I said, so, I want to be able to make up that income. So it's at least beneficial enough for me to take the time away from my family to do it.
Hmm.
And I really want to entertain people. I
Yeah.
enjoy it when people get pleasure. And I kind of explained it just like I did to you. And he said, okay, so how much money do you need to make from it? And I said,
Mm.
probably, I don't know, 30 to 36,000 would be sufficient. And then that'd be fine for my retirement.
Hmm.
I'll probably die in 3 years. And because the average lifespan for a cop when he retires is 6 months.
I,
That,
I've heard that. And I
yeah.
just read Stephen King's Mr. Mercedes. And that was the first time I think I was really directly confronted with that idea of like out of the force and suddenly suicide rates jump,
Yes.
and just like career, you just like no purpose anymore. You had this high purpose of keeping people safe, and the action and the adventure. And then now you're sitting on a couch watching Jeopardy and you're just like, life sucks.
It's absolutely true, and I've seen it a lot, in the profession, obviously, and
Yeah.
it's not just suicide; it's all kinds of other things too. But suicide's super high on the list, just like it is for people coming back from war. Because let's see, when they're in a war, they have the brotherhood, they have real purpose, and so when all of that is suddenly taken away, it's difficult. And a lot of times for police officers, that is their identity.
Yeah.
So if you can try to not make that just your identity,
Hmm.
it's much better. So like family. Family is huge. If you're really big on your family, or if you have other ways. So that's the kind of things. But writing also helps
Yeah.
because there's a purpose there, and it's kind of like what you're saying. And I love Mr. Mercedes, Stephen King,
Yeah.
one of my all-time favorite authors. Uh,
Yeah.
in fact, I think I've read his book on writing probably 15 times. Because
It's phenomenal.
it's a
Yeah.
masterpiece. Yeah.
It is a masterpiece. It's the last book I read before I got married. And it's just, yeah, he's a brilliant, brilliant author.
He is a brilliant. In fact, even his books that I think his later books are not always as good because of the
Hmm.
endings. I find them to not be as good. And here I am criticizing Stephen King. I'm
Yeah.
not worthy. I'm not worthy. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me put that aside for a second because we all have
Hmm.
to look at it. But it doesn't matter. Any book of his you pick up is
Yeah.
a writing class. It's like taking a college course.
Yes.
So you can learn something from every napkin he scrawled on or piece of toilet paper. That's
Hmm.
just it because he is so good.
Yeah.
Probably being like Shakespeare doing it. But anyways,
Yeah.
so I talked to Stephen and I said, well, probably $30,000 to $36,000. And so he thought about it for a second. He goes, I can do that for you.
That's cool.
I thought that was interesting that he said it like that. He goes,
Yeah.
you'll put in the work. I can almost guarantee you that you'll get at least that much. He goes, I think you'll do more than that, but
Yeah.
I will almost guarantee. He goes, I can't guarantee you
Yeah.
because so much of it depends on you putting in the
Hmm.
work. He said, but if you do decide to do this course, I'll take you on because Steve doesn't take everybody on.
Yeah.
And he said, you can do at least that much. So I
Yeah.
said, okay. So did it. And then what did I do for the next 6 or 7 months? Nothing. Paid the
Yeah.
money, but we were
That's
so busy
hilarious.
working everything else. Right. So then
Yeah.
I was in that other category where I did nothing. I think it was because I was afraid that
Hmm.
if it didn't work, I was
You
done.
had nothing left.
Right. What would I do after that? I think
Yeah.
in honesty, that's what I really looking back on it. I think that's more what it was.
Yeah.
Also incredibly busy getting ready for retirement, but I still had a couple years before retirement. So,
Yeah.
but in 2019, I told my wife, I said, "Hey, at the end of 2019, I said, hey, we're really close. this stuff is mind-boggling to me when I started looking through it. I said, and she's much more technically oriented than I am because I'm just a grunt. And
Yeah.
so be type, okay? But my wife is smart, and so I said, can we work on this together? So she did, and we sat down and we just melted our minds until we got it done. And I will tell everybody, Bramwell, I think unless you're probably more of a tech guy, so it might have been easier for you, but it was work. I mean, yeah, setting up the stores, figuring out, even though he takes you step by step, and the new course is even way better than the old course, but he takes you step by step on how to do everything that we do, the bundle process, the amount of books. Luckily, I'd finished a second book in the Sheepdog series at that time. And so I went ahead and I just raced through while we were doing that. I got my third book done.
Yeah.
And it made me, I think, if I remember correctly, the third book was the fastest book I had ever done. And it was because and that's what really got me into outline. I was like, because I was thinking, I've got to do something to the people at the conferences that, I listened to. Plus, I had to get it done in time to get this bundle ready. So, and that's what I do is I bundle my first 3 in the series plus Gunwood USA together. That's what I do with my $9.99 bundle. So I hurried through and got Carroll in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so the one question I want to ask is, you talked about the $9.99 bundle. I'm curious, how many books do you have? Because people who are listening to this show every Wednesday right now, this is TRBM Ammo Edition. And so people listening are, I think, getting into the mindset of maybe this is something I want to buy, and this is a different way that they're going to think it through. So there's different ways to approach this process, but the bundle is what makes it so successful. How many books do you have in at $9.99 right now?
I have 4. I have the first 3 in the Sheepdog series. So you have Sheepdogs, you have Hair of the Dog, and you have Feral Instinct.
Okay.
So those 3. And then I have Gunwood USA, my one from Glendale. I have it as a 4th because those characters from Gunwood, the ones who make it, they come into play because it's all in Colorado.
Yeah.
So they come into play and they interact with Gil and the dogs.
That's so much fun.
Scenarios, which is a lot of fun, right? We all steal from the authors we love. We'll say borrow. No, we steal from the authors we love. And Stephen King has his universe, right?
Yes.
And I think he was one of the first to really incorporate kind of the entire universal idea that he does. I could be wrong. It could be that there's others, but he definitely really put it together. All kinds of books from very different genres and everything else. And yet they can all play a part in his universe. And so I do kind of the same thing. All of my books, I've got 10 books in total right now, including my horror novel. I've got another horror novel I finished. My wife's editing it now. Taking her a little while to edit it because I need a lot of editing.
Yeah.
So I do a rewrite, and I think on this new one called Abaddon that she's working on right now, I've done about 4 rewrites. It's another horror novel, so I want to get one more, and then I'm going to do a bundle on that too, totally separate. Right now, it's just my mystery readers that read my horror novel for the most part, and it's just because it's there and they like my stuff, so they'll read it. But it's a little too scary for a lot of my readers, a little too horror genre. Okay, so it doesn't always mix the best with my other stuff. Yeah. So I do just those 3 and then Gunwood. And that's my $9.99 bundle. And then of course now that we do a lot of the direct sales. So I'm getting ready now that I've got book 7 and I'm just finished book 8. As soon as book 8 is done, we're going to do another bundle, I believe. That's our my son's now in charge of all my marketing. So I don't have to do all the ads and everything anymore. I just let him do it. All of my kids
are lucky duck.
I know, I am super lucky, except for sometimes I'm like, oh, wait a minute, don't we have to do this and this? And he's like, no, Dad, that's not the way we do that anymore. Okay, fine. Let me go right.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's what we want to do. So he does that. My daughter does all my covers. And
wow, that's great.
She's a fantastic artist, so I get tons of praise. In fact, that's probably what sells a lot of my books right there is my covers. And
the cover for the first one in the Sheepdog series is particularly striking. I've looked over all of the covers, and the first one, you've got that really stark white background with the dog, but then there's a whole graphic inside of the dog, sort of, it's not howling at the moon, but kind of looking up. That graphic really captured me. And I will be honest, I looked at it immediately, and I think I knew the same way that I know with my covers that somebody in-house did it for you. It looks really great, but it doesn't have exactly the kind of typeset that you would see in some other books. And I did that, and I've had existential crisis about my book covers sometimes, because I'm like, what's not working? Because I'm not where you're at. In ammo, I was profitable for about a month and starting to scale, and then I scaled to a point, and suddenly it's like the bottom fell out, and I haven't been able to figure it out for the last, like, since the holiday, basically. And that's neither here nor there. But throughout this process, I keep trying to look and say, like, why am I failing? Where am I failing? How am I failing? Because I know this thing works, and I'll get a taste of how well it works when it works, and then back to the drawing board. Like, what do I need to tweak? What messaging needs to change? How do I need to, like, arrange all the words? And there was a point where I was looking at my covers. My wife has a degree in art and graphic design, and so she's great. But yeah, typeset's not exactly what you're used to seeing. And I think there are a few people out there who catch it and notice it. And the fun thing, and the whole reason I'm going on this long monologue here, is to say that I changed the covers. I spent money to get covers done from a professional cover designer. And then I took it out to my very large Twitter following and said, hey, I'd love your feedback. What are you seeing here? And side by side, there was not a single person who voted for the paid cover. Everybody was like, well, if I can be honest, I like that red silhouette cover. It's so eye-catching. And so I was like, okay, I'm going back to my wife. And I told her, I was like, I will never not trust you again.
Let me bring up one thing to you about the scale issue.
Yeah.
Because I have run into that too. Now, every year so far since I started ammo, I've at least done six figures. I mean, I've done six figures and better.
And that's when you're paying all the money into the system. You're pulling six figures out.
Not always. I could be a little bit under there at times.
But still.
But right there, right.
Yep.
And I will tell you that I am absolutely not the best. I mean, if it wasn't for the ammo system, that would never have happened. I know that.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I tried. I tried it every other way there is, and it didn't happen. And so it's not just that I have a great series, because it doesn't matter if you have a great series if nobody can see it and know it and get it out there. Okay, Steve brings this up, and it's true. You could have word of mouth that says it's like hitting the lottery, right? Where it just becomes this, it's kind of like something going viral, you know, on the TikTok or something. It can happen, but it's rare, and it's like hitting the lottery. So that could happen, but I'm going to say that it vastly doesn't. Mm-hmm. Doing a sustained correct marketing system is what does it. Now, I am still not great because I just want to spend so much time writing, and I need to devote more time to marketing, because right now the only two places I'm really at is ammo with my direct sales on Facebook and Amazon. And I've never paid 1 cent to Amazon for marketing. They just do it. And the more success you have, the more Amazon goes ahead and promotes you on their own.
Yeah.
And also,
because regardless if your book sells, they're making money. So they don't care if they're actually putting, their marketing behind it or not.
Right. Because they will make some money on everyone. In fact, they make a lot.
A good amount of money. Exactly.
Yeah. 2/3 of everything you sell. And I just saw Amazon just sent a thing out saying that they're going to be taking more of our profits away on the print because it's costing them more. It's probably true.
Yeah.
That still doesn't matter. It still hurts us, so it is difficult. So if it wasn't for the ammo program, I wouldn't have had success like I have at all.
Yeah.
So, but I need to get into, Barnes and Noble and book club and, all these other things. And so my son is beginning to work on that now, because really it's just those two things. That's what I've had all my success from. And especially when we moved over, we started off and it did great, especially in 20 and part of 21. We did great with COVID and everything else hitting. I hate for that to be something that helped, but it really did. I think people were inside so much, they read so much more. And the $9.99 book bundle did great with the free book going out, and then getting the other 2 books plus Gunwood for that cheap price. That was a great marketing, and I still use it to bring in new customers. But when we moved up to like our $27 for 3 or 4 books for our other stack with no free book, holy cats, it was just at a certain time, because Steve had tried it before and it hadn't worked very well. Yeah. And then we tried it again and it did fantastic. Oh, I know what I was bringing up and I wanted to hit onto you real quick is the scalability.
Yep.
It seems like you hit different plateaus with Facebook. Yeah. And when you hit a certain plateau, like right at the $300 mark or right around the $300 mark a day in cost, we always would dive.
Hmm.
And I still have a hard time getting over that.
Yeah.
And when you dive, when you're spending, $300 a day
Yeah.
in advertising,
Yeah.
you don't have to dive for very long before it cuts into
Yeah.
your
Absolutely.
burden, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it gets painful.
Hmm.
So we still strive to be able to break through that, because I'd like to be able to spend $1,000 a day on that.
Absolutely.
We're making our revenue back and getting, everything. I would love to do that,
Yeah.
but I don't know what it is about the algorithm or what,
Yeah.
because there's nothing different we're doing, right?
Right. Yeah.
We're not
There's.
changing our ads. We're not changing our books. It's
Mhm.
just something to do with their algorithm when it gets close to that 300. It's just like, with Steve, how he talks about it. He
Mhm.
tells you the right way to advance you don't just
Yes.
put an extra $100 into the
Exactly.
advertising market, because for some reason that crashes your system. I don't know why.
Hmm.
And I don't know why right at $300 is hard. I've been really tempted to just say, okay, for a week, we're going to push through and we're going to go to
Yeah.
$350.
Yep.
But that's easy to say, a little harder to do. And I don't know that
That's
it's
very.
it's a good method or not. And Steve hasn't, he doesn't say, yeah, that's the right way to do it. And I listen to Steve because he knows a lot more
Absolutely.
about it than I do. One other thing
Absolutely.
I do want to say in favor of ammo, just for anybody who's thinking about it, and it's this. Steve, okay, when I joined ammo, I thought, a lot of these things, once you get in, there's all these other things you have to buy and everything else. I never had to buy another thing. I did take the Alpha 360 course just because such talented authors in there. And
Yeah.
that was a couple $1,000. So well spent money. I mean, it was
Yeah.
so awesome. But that's only kind of Steve. I mean, that's Steve, but it's a drop in the bucket to him.
Hmm.
But the course is fantastic. So,
Yes.
but other than that, I have not spent another cent going to ammo. I mean, going to Steve or any of that.
Hmm.
And you know how it is. Steve does meetings with us every week.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't buy that kind of
I
for
know.
the. I mean, it's a little bit of a high ticket price to get into ammo, and I think now with the new system,
Yeah.
you can get that much smaller. But when we first started, it was a set price, and it was steep if you're getting ready to retire and you're not, but it's not that steep. And I made it
Yeah.
back in like 2 months,
Yeah.
just doing my books. I made it back in really under 2 months. So it was like, but he doesn't charge anything else. He meets with us every week. We have our big author meeting. By the way, how come
Yeah.
I haven't seen you? Are you usually in the?
I'm still in the foundations call because I've never had a sustainable level of profitability where I go to the scaling call.
How do you do on KDP?
Still not well. KDP is still a different thing. So I just kind of mess with my pricing a little bit to see if I can help out, because I was where you were, charging $9.99 for ebooks, because that was very representative. In fact, we're roughly the same genre, both detective suspense type
Oh,
of
okay. Okay,
thing.
I'm diving into you right after we get off this call.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I just haven't quite hit it yet, and I love the program. So a little bit about me, and then I want to make sure that we finish strong with all of your great stuff. But I tried different ways to skin the cat. I started the podcast hoping to build that word of mouth thing. So really, it was about, I want to have a community, and I know that along with this community, I'll be able to sell my books and things like that. That didn't quite work out the way I thought. And then I spent all this time building a podcast and less time writing, so I had to write that ship. And then I joined Russell Brunson's thing. He was doing a funnel hacker thing that I thought
Right.
that would be great. And there was a money back guarantee. And I was at the point where I had tried two other programs between there and the podcasting program that I did. I'd spent middle five figures for different courses with no success.
Wow.
So when I saw
Yeah.
Steve, I wrote him an email and I said, I've looked at a lot of stuff and yours looks real to me, but I'm like really gun shy right now. So I sent him probably, I don't know, 1,000-word email telling him exactly my situation. And I was like, you say there's a money back guarantee, so I'm going to join this program unless you tell me not to. But trust me, I'll ask for my money back if it doesn't work. His literal reply to me, to this day, it still stings in the best possible ways. He's like, I see no red flags here. Go ahead and sign up. That's all he said. It's just like, he's a robot. He has no emotion.
Yes.
So anyways, but yeah, it's been great. I have not had the success that I think some of my peers have, but I do know I'm on the right path. And like I said, seeing those moments of this is how it works and this is what's possible, to be an author who doesn't have to be in bookstores like Gordon Carroll, who doesn't have to worry about going and doing readings, who can be advertising to Facebook. And what we haven't talked about is the best part is you own your audience and make
Right.
a great living doing it. So I want to hear a little bit about your audience too, because I think that that's a huge thing.
Well, I will say this. I love my fans, I mean,
Yeah.
and this is, are you going to have Lydia on, or is it Naomi?
Yeah. So I've got Lydia and David, right? Lydia and David
Okay,
are,
good.
are
David's here, right?
I
Her
think so.
husband.
Yep.
So one thing, all the people I know of in AMBO do is we really interact with our audience.
Yeah.
So like, and that takes up a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
It does. I spend probably at least an hour a day answering emails,
Mm.
the bad ones and the good ones. The bad ones are usually just, I didn't get my set or whatever because
Yeah.
they're spam blocks it or whatever. The people are not used to the whole book funnel model because
Yeah.
they're used to, Kindle. But it's just a matter of educating them. And I've seen that over the years, as book funnel has grown and as people have gotten more used to it, that becomes less and less, and that's good.
Yeah.
But there's also just the things like you better not kill the dog in this one, little things like that. But by and large, I mean, like, and Steve's right. One bad comment, I don't know why, but it can bug me for months,
Yeah.
Whereas, because I think like I think beginning of this month, on my Amazon reviews, I got one bad review, out of,
Mm.
a
Yeah.
thousand, I
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
one. And it just irked me because it was hard. And
Of course.
who critiques me more than anybody else? I think I've had 3 bad critiques, and they've all been from like dog trainers.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So
man.
they're like, "Oh, that's the old," and it's like, dude, you don't even know what you're talking about. I dealt with dogs for 35 years, so I just
Yeah.
get so frustrated. But there's a saying in the dog community, canine trainer community. It's, if you have 3 canine trainers, the only thing 2 of them can agree on is the third one is wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like that. So I should just blow it off and not care at all, but you just can't. So Steve says, he doesn't even read his, but I do read mine because
Mhm.
I want to interact with my audience. So my Facebook audience, I mean, I have a huge Facebook audience to come in and talk about my
Yeah.
stuff all the time. And so I answer every single one of those, unless I accidentally miss it, but I try to answer every single one of them. It's usually a short, quick answer, but I keep involved with them. And like, sometimes I'll get somebody who's older and they have a very difficult time working the technology, which I
Mhm.
understand completely. And so I'll go in and I'll have my wife help me, and we'll walk them through it to help them,
Yeah.
because that's how we grow that community.
Yep.
And my people are mostly the people who really love it. They love mysteries, but they also love the dogs, and they love the
Yeah.
perspective of the dog. In fact, one of my things that's a little bit tough for a lot of my audience is my violence. I have no
Mm.
cussing in my books. I
Yep.
have no filth, no vulgarity, no filth. And I have a very slight Christian message that goes through almost all of them.
Mm.
But what I do have a lot of is violence, a lot of action.
Yeah.
And it's partially because, the guy is the dog and the handler, they're going against bad people, really bad people. So violence is sometimes required, just like in police work. We don't want to have to do violence, but
Yeah.
it does come down to that sometimes. So that's an integral part. So that I do sometimes with my older part of my crowd. Sometimes it'll be a little tough for them. They're like, oh, that part was a little, especially with the dogs.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they won't care at all if the human gets hurt.
Uh-huh.
But when the dogs gets hurt, it's like, I
Yeah.
almost cried. I cried. Why
I
did you
know.
do that to the
Yeah,
dog?
I
So,
completely
but
understand, even from a personal perspective. I don't know why this is. And two, I grew up in the church. I'm not as involved at this point as I was.
sure,
My audience knows a lot about my religious thoughts, actually. But
good. It
uh,
should be in there. It's part of you.
yeah, it
Good.
is. It is, and it's such a struggle as a bit of an aside. But there's a weird thing that happens for me, so I can relate to your readers and possibly even to you, in that violence to animals really, really hurts me, because I still view them as being uncorrupted in most ways. Like, they're just functioning as designed. And so when a
Right.
human
Exactly.
takes action to hurt an animal, boy, it's really tough to see
Yeah,
that.
because there is intent there. Where's the dog?
Yes.
It's kind of like Judy Shineland, Judge Judy. She always says, "We don't blame the dogs. Dog does what the dog does." That's exactly
Yes.
right. The
Yeah.
dog does what the dog does. Whatever its drives and its integral makeup are,
Yeah.
that's what they do. But humans are a little different story. You're right,
Mhm.
because we have intent, and that does make the difference. So I
Yeah.
absolutely. Are we brothers?
I know it's been funny that like there are a couple of things along the way that I'm just like, this is a fun conversation. There's a lot of touch points for sure.
Yes,
So,
yes. But
um,
I can't
yeah, go.
recommend the Camel program more strongly for now. There's requirements Steve has, like,
Yes.
and it's wise. That's why I had to really work through, and that's why I went to outlining because of feral instinct, so I could get that third book done,
Yeah.
so I would have enough for a bundle. And I started with four because I put Gunwood in there too, but it's a little bit different, but it's still in the same genre, so you can do that. And I think that's his method of what he requires you to have
Hmm.
is what helps make it successful. So, and that's for fiction books, of course. I know he's got a little different format for the
Yeah.
nonfiction, but
Yep.
for us fiction guys, that's where it's at. So, and
Yep.
sometime, if we ever get to talk again, Steve's really looking into the AI stuff right now.
Yeah.
Because it will cause some challenges for us, but
Hmm.
it also gives us opportunities, like all technology, right? Or all
Yep.
future advancements. We have challenges because it could put us out of work.
Yep.
But if we roll with the punches and we advance with the times, we can actually use it as an asset.
Very much.
So, like, my son now incorporates a lot of AI in our ads. He does some of
Yes.
the
I do
pictures,
too.
does some of the stuff like that. You too?
Yes, absolutely. I am every picture I use now is generated through Midjourney. I know that there are
That's what
people
he
have
uses too.
issues, but it's such an amazing program. And the things that it can
Incredible.
design, like if you can think it, you can create it. And that's a really cool thing for people who don't have visual art skills.
Right.
Midjourney is an amazing tool. It's a great asset.
And I don't have that now. My daughter, of course, does, but
Yeah.
I don't. She wouldn't have time to do each of my ads because we have to put out a lot of ads,
Yeah. Yeah.
And now for us, I'm a little bit different than a lot of the ammo people in that, and it was because I was technically ignorant and maybe lazy. I don't know, but I never put out a ton of ads. I usually have like 2 or 3 ads going at a time. That's it.
Yeah.
And my son kind of keeps that as long as they're good and profitable. But we're probably
Hmm.
now with AI and with the ability, and then on our last ammo meeting last Friday morning, Steve was really bringing this up that that we can generate 5-10 times the amount of ads we used to have
Yeah.
by utilizing this in a more profitable way. I don't mean just profitable, but I mean
Yeah.
profitable for our times. So I can see us using it way, way more. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about it.
I'm
There's
too.
always a little bit of danger, but still it's exciting.
Yeah, I hear some people talking about, and then we will start to wrap up, but I hear some people
Sure.
talking about using it to generate their blurbs or even their taglines. So I've toyed around with that a little bit. And I had one of my most successful ads was a tagline that I generated AI. So that was pretty cool. But
Wow.
more often than not, if I generate some taglines, I go back in and massage them a little bit to just give them just a little
Right.
bit what I'm looking for that maybe OpenAI can't figure out. But yeah, all in all, it's an unbelievable time to be an author, and to be scared that AI is going to write books that people love is kind of missing the point because you still
I
have to
agree.
get in front of your readers. So for everybody who doesn't get served one of your ads, what's the best way to buy a book from you right now if people are listening and then they don't get served an ad on Facebook?
Right. And I will also send you some of my texts. I'd like to offer everybody in your
Yeah,
audience my $9.99 deal so they can get in and
perfect.
get a free book plus 3 others. So I'll
Awesome.
send you that right after we're done here.
Okay.
So I don't know if you just want to put it up on text or whatever else. Otherwise, they can go to GordonCarrollBooks.com. That goes to my Shopify page, which is my landing page. And also, if they want to email me at Gordon, Gordon, D as in Douglas, Carroll, Carroll, at gmail.com. I answer all my emails. I don't leave anybody out. And I'll be glad to talk to you or send you a free book so you can start it off and see if you like it after that.
Awesome. That's perfect. Yes, we will get all of that. That'll be in the show notes for the podcast. So if you're listening and you want to dive into Gordon's books, make sure to check the show notes for all of the links to his doorbuster deal and all of the good stuff. Gordon, it was an extreme pleasure to talk with you. I was looking forward to it. I'll admit I was a little bit nervous because Steve speaks so highly of you. You've had such success. You're one of the tremendous success stories of the program, and what can really happen for somebody who works really hard and apparently wastes 6 months before they start to work hard. So, I mean, that's awesome. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for my first podcast. You made it incredibly easy. I felt totally at home and I really appreciate it. And I hope you the best success.
Thanks. You too. Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?